Preparing to live stream the meeting. Preparing to live stream the meeting. Okay, this is when I have to
mute that part.
Mute, oh, not mute the audio. Okay, good. Mute the audio, and we have a bunch of people here. Orlando Espinal. How are you, Orlando Espinal?
Muy bien, gracias. ¿Y tú? ¿Usted?
Yo bien. ¿Te conozco, Orlando?
Sí, me conoce. He ido a la iglesia varias veces.
Pues bienvenido.
Gracias.
Muchas gracias. Welcome, Orlando. And we have a whole bunch of people coming on here. This is lovely to see. The screen lights up. Dorothy, Faye, how are you, Faye? Can I unmute Faye? No, she has to unmute herself if she would like to say hello. We have Karen, we have Ron Albert. Hi, Ron.
Hi.
And we have Orlando Espinal, and we have this person with just their phone number. Hello, person with a phone number.
Hello.
Hello.
If the people with a phone number want to have a name associated with their phone number, we can change it. So if you're social.
If you're
Or
a social,
ask them to give their names at some point.
Yeah.
yes, if you're a social person with a phone number 617-460, let us know your name. No, they muted. I think they'd rather remain anonymous, which is just fine. We are.
Dean, it's Mary Lynn.
Hello, Mary Lynn.
Hi, Mary Lynn.
I'm the one with no video. So I'm watching you on YouTube and listening to you. So that's a little confusing since they're not simultaneous. But anyway, good morning.
Mary Lynn, so nice to have you.
Buen dia.
Buenos dias. Welcome.
Buenos dias.
Welcome. And Susan Nye, I see you're here with us.
Hello.
Oh my gosh, Susan.
Hello.
You're going to see my bookcase for a while. I'm going behind this screen, but I'm not going to go off video.
We are going to make an attempt to, in the hopes of eventually really being a broadcast, to start on time. We're already a little bit late, but oh no! I was going to light a candle, but I have all dead. Oh, I found one good match. This one, if this one fails me, I'm in deep trouble. Ha!
Oh.
A candle we light on this beautiful morning in Copley Square for a variety of reasons, which I will explain to you later. In proud remembrance of Community Church's 100 years of history, and in proud anticipation of Community Church's next 100 years of history as well. This candle is also lit in memory of Ed Agro, who was occasional attendee to Community Church of Boston, longtime activist on the labor front in the city of Boston, longtime relationship. We remember you, Ed Agro. Welcome to Community Church. So glad to have everyone, especially on this day. I'll tell you that I am down at the church for the very bizarre reason.
Oh, Dean, I don't see the YouTube.
You don't see the YouTube? Let me make sure.
I'm watching it.
Hi, this is Dick Kashishian.
Hi, Dick.
Hi, Dick.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. And we have
Hi,
Mark.
Dick.
Hello, Mark. Okay, so we proceed with an explanation that in the midst of doing this presentation, which today is my day to tell you about the archives. Hi, Susie. Love seeing these faces come on. That we are also in the process of moving back to our house. Our house was destroyed by a falling tree 10 months ago. It has been repaired and we are soon to be back, but silly me ordered that our internet be cut off today instead of tomorrow. So I'm not home, I'm down at the church, which is fine because there's I'm surrounded by documents. And this meeting is about the archives, the documents in the archives. So we are especially privileged and tickled pink to have a new contributor, but several times contributor to Community Church's wealth of music, and that would be Rob FLAX. Rob FLAX hi Rob, is a techie nerd extraordinaire. I wanted to show you, Rob, my new toy. This is going to help us make for a better feed onto the planetary airwaves, and it's supposedly a nice one. And Rob spends a lot of time on his YouTube page recommending little boxes and toys, and so we have with us two incredible consummate nerds. One of them is Charlie Welch, who is our technical advisor here, and the other one is Rob FLAX, who, in addition to being a electronic nerd music box extraordinaire, is a brilliantly talented violin player and layering one-man band kind of technical guru, and we're so glad to have him with you. I'll mention also that Rob FLAX is all over my new album, which is called Arise. He was an excellent sideman, not just playing fiddle, but a whole bunch of different instruments. Let's all welcome Rob FLAX for our opening tune. Thanks, Rob, for being with
me. Hello. Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. It's great to see so many friendly faces and reconnect. It's been a little while since I've been at CCB, and so this is the next best thing, and feels great to be there. And all from the comfort of my own home, so it doesn't get better than that. I thought I would play for you guys a couple songs today, one of which I'll start with I'll say a half request, because I fished for requests and was considering playing this one, but Dean confirmed my suspicions that it might be enjoyed. I'm going to start with a song that I wrote in 2011 or so. It's called Angle. It's on my debut record, Distractible Boy. That is a self-titled record, because I'm a distractible boy. I was walking to the Ashmont train station, and there was the sideways rain was happening. Do you know what I mean when I say the sideways rain, where this is my umbrella here, you're getting rained on from the side. And so I leaned my umbrella to try and protect myself from the rain this way. And of course it started raining from another angle. And even when I twisted back this direction, it started raining from the first angle again. And I said to myself, I never can predict the angle of the rain. And that's still true, but at least I got a song out of it. So here is my song, Angle. Oh, I never can predict the angle of the rain. If I lean my umbrella, the direction seems to change. Try to keep myself protected, but I always try in vain. Oh, I never can predict the angle of the rain, the angle of the rain. Oh, I never can predict what time the train will come. Seems I always miss by seconds end up sucking on my thumb, standing on that open platform in the winter makes me numb. Oh, I never can predict what time the train will come, what time the train will come. Can expect what mood I'll find you in. Will I be your ray of sunshine or get underneath your skin? Gamble on your disposition, but I know that I can't win. Oh, I never can predict the mood I'll find you in, the mood that you'll be in. All right, Fiddle, tell him. Though the platform may be chilly and my clothing might get wet, and I haven't found the secret to your body language yet, someday I'll have all the answers and I'll always catch the train, but still I never can predict the angle of the rain. Oh, the angle of the rain. Na 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 na, na 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 na. The angle of the rain. Na 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 na, na 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 na. The angle of the rain. Na 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 na, na 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 na. The angle of the rain. Na 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 na, na 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 na. The angle of the rain. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. Still, I never can predict the angle of the rain. Oh, the angle of the rain. Oh, I love this. This is a brilliant silent applause tactic. I haven't seen that before. I haven't been on so many Zoom calls. I love this. This is great. Thank you all so much. I feel so great right now. Thank you.
Maybe, Rob, maybe you haven't been to events with deaf people who applaud that way.
Not much. Not a lot, admittedly. I love that I'm still hearing it from someone's stream.
Not from your stream? I thought
No. I stopped playing a minute.
I thought you were reprising forever.
Oh, that would be lovely, but
Over and
the
over
times
and
must
over.
go forward. I think it's probably from the YouTube stream in someone's
Yeah.
audio.
Oh, yeah.
Mute that guy.
It's nice to hear. It means it worked. It came out the other end. So
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Yeah. Well,
I'm going to temporarily, for 2 seconds, mute everybody and then we'll come back.
Okay.
it's an eternal feedback. Maybe it's me. I'm unmuted, I think.
Yeah. Dean, now you're the only one unmuted.
Okay. Well, we move forward with just a welcome to everybody, both on this Zoom call as well as live on YouTube. And we thank you for being with us. This is a strange moment. I came down here early. I thought it originally was just to pick up some documents that I was going to show you, but it became clear as I left the house that we had no internet, and the reason was that I had asked it to be cut off because we're in the middle of moving. So I'm down here and we're broadcasting from here, and you see our in the back, you can see the backdrop that Crystal Rollins designed so beautifully. Out front, I will let you know that, and you'll see it in this video, that the Copley Square is virtually empty. There's almost no cars anywhere. There's a few homeless people and an occasional car drives by, nothing parked on either side. It's one little part of me says, wow, that's beautiful, amazing. Parking? But we know the very strange and difficult moment that we're in, and that these restaurants are in, including our tenant that is closed until further notice. Hopefully sooner than later they will open, starting for takeout business and outdoor sidewalk cafe business. Hopefully we'll see how that goes. But in the meanwhile, we are proving that we are not just a building, that we are a community. And here we are, 15 of us together, and hopefully more on YouTube. I think that, and this is something that I hope will turn into a real exposition on our history, and maybe into a more formal video documentary about community church as seen in our archives. So I have on these Zoom calls, I've done some sort of readings before, but I left those at home where we've done the Zooms from, and so I can't do that, but I can, we're surrounded by documents. Just going to start this by grabbing one that happens to be on top. And this is from the era of Jason Lydon. And Jason was both a radical political activist on the issues of LGBT folks and the issues of prison folks. We hired Jason. His one very bright, shining, outstanding item on his resume was that he had just gotten out of jail, where he had been for 6 months, for protesting the School of the Americas in Georgia. Jason was a very young man when he came to us, and he was very set on convincing us that prayer would be a good thing at community church. And there were that met with mixed reactions to different ears of radical diehard atheists, and to other ears like my own, which sort of welcomed at least hearing that opinion. I come from a very praying family, evangelical missionary background, and can see the beauty of prayer. And I've heard prayers that that bring you to tears, you know, events and prayers that also are used to evoke a social justice message. So I want to just read this. I haven't planned this at all, but this paragraph from one of our founders, John Haynes Holmes, who was a preacher from New York. He founded the Community Church of New York, and he would come up to Community Church of Boston and preach once a month for the first like 15 years. And here's his quote about prayer. Prayer is attention unfolding into intention. It is purpose, resolution, dedication, which brings us face to face with the greatest of all spiritual discoveries. That if our prayers are to be answered, we must answer them ourselves. That we are already answering our prayers in the mere expression of the desire that they be fulfilled. I had never read that before, and it's beautiful. Here's another one. I'll go on. We pray because it helps us live better. We pray because we need this contact with ourselves, with our community, and with the entire universe. We pray because of our need to bring to mind the people we love, to reflect on the grace of their lives, to recall their sufferings and joys, and to share with them in their mysterious encounters with us. Prayer reveals the multiplicity and unity we are all. Prayer takes place in the light of the concrete materiality of the beings we are, in connection with the materiality of the world that surrounds us, in relatedness with that whole of which we are one tiny expression. That's a quote from Yvonne Guevara. And then there's some more prayers of Jason's that are asking the loving spirit of life or the magical mystery of the universe, or asking oneself, may I open my heart to the lessons of patience? May I be present in this moment? May our leaders step back and listen to the voices of the people. May the people rise up and take down the power of our leaders. On and on. Jason, I hope you see this. We remember you very fondly. He was with us for about 8 years, from 2004 to 2012. And he is now a minister of this, I think it's called the second parish in Chicago, pretty big church. It kind of became a pattern. We had 3 who we had during their seminary years, and they became ordained and properly ministered, and then they were the hell out of here. That should be a lesson for us, a lesson of some kind. Anyway, I will stop blabbing because you're going to hear more blabbing from me later, and I should have probably had somebody else be the master of ceremonies of this Zoom, but it's too late now, right? I will mention you one thing, which is one person who was MC and facilitator quite a bit while he was president and very active at the church was Dick Crowley. And I want to tell you that Dick Crowley is still hospitalized, but in a convalescent place near Boston. And Dick, I talked to him yesterday on the phone, and he sounds a lot better, and I'm relieved and happy. Dick was president for a couple of years of difficult, tormented community church time, 2014, 15, somewhere around there. So Dick Crowley, we're thinking of you, and we hope you're back with us. Dick said, Dean, I'm in quarantine for 14 days. Then will you come pick me up? I'd like to go out for my first beer in 2 months. So Dick Crowley. Let's bring back Rob FLAX. Let's unmute that guy and hear more from him. How about a couple of songs from you, Rob? And I'll mention to you all that Rob has some beautiful recordings not only with him, but with a couple of groups he's with that he hasn't brought to church yet. I hope he brings one of these days when the coast is clear. Rob Flax.
That's the plan. Soon, I hope. I would like to do a couple more for you. I got one for you right now. This is a tune by one of my favorite composers. So not one that I wrote, but one of my favorite musicians, activists, television personalities, singer-songwriters, Mr. Rogers. So as I'm wearing my Mr. Rogers t-shirt today, I think that in these times, his words of "look to the helpers" definitely come to mind. I wanted to play for you "It's You I Like." It's you I like. It's not the clothes you wear. It's not the way you do your hair. It's you I like. The way you are right now. Way right down inside you. Not the things that hide you. Like your Zoom backdrop. That's just beside you. It's you I like. Every part of you. Your skin, your eyes, your feelings, whether old or new. I hope that you'll remember, even when you're feeling blue, that it's you I like. It's you yourself. It's you. Oh, it's you I like. All right, Fiddle, tell them a little about something. It's you I like. Every part of you. Your skin, your eyes, your feelings, whether old or new. I hope that you'll remember, even when you're feeling blue, that it's you I like. It's you yourself. It's you. Oh, it's you I like. Thank you. Thank you. It's you I like. This is a time of great unrest and uncertainty, and I think that message is a good one always. Your skin, your eyes, your feelings, whatever part of you, it's you I like. And I wanted to do another song now. This is an original. It's not yet released. This is something of a premiere, I suppose. I wrote a song called Ex Tenebris Lux, which is Latin for out of darkness, light. And I took this title from a painting. The painting is by my girlfriend, Linda Alila, beautiful artist and painter. And she painted the painting Ex Tenebris Lux as a response to the death of Eric Garner. And it was a mantra for her and a sort of meditative practice to paint this. If you'd like to see an image of that painting, you can go to her website, which is lindaalila.com. I'll put that in the chat. I can do that. How about that? lindaalila.com. Check out her art. Really beautiful stuff. And the message is basically one of, even in these moments of real darkness, some light will emerge from that. In that case, it was just the slow awakening and awareness that was beginning to happen as a result of Eric Garner's death. And I think that's pretty appropriate right now to reflect on that, given how much is happening in this country today and yesterday and previously. I'm going to use some technology here. Sometimes I'll be over here. Sometimes I'll be back here. Here goes. What do you do when your world is on fire? Do you just sit back and watch it burn? Smoke is rising higher and higher. Are we past the point of no return? It's hard to see with ashes in your eyes, but we'll find a way. Oh, it must be there, 'cause out of darkness light, out of darkness light. This too shall pass, good and bad alike. Out of darkness light, out of darkness light. We can make it out together, so I'm asking you to put your hand in mine. How can you breathe when the air has grown cold? The leaves have fallen from the trees. All the greens have turned to rotting golds. And the crops have withered from the freeze. The ground is hard, but the roots will be alright. We can't see them now, but they must be there, 'cause out of darkness light, out of darkness light. This too shall pass, good and bad alike. Out of darkness light, out of darkness light. We can make it out together, so I'm asking you to put your hand in mine. Out of darkness light, out of darkness light. This too shall pass, good and bad alike. Out of darkness light, you very much.
I unmuted people. You can applaud for real.
Oh, okay.
Okay, back. Be 1 second while we mute everybody.
Thank you, Rob. That was beautiful. It's really beautiful and just so made for this moment. I think of two lines from songs, one that I perform a lot, and the line says, "If I stood out in the rain night, my only light a candle a million miles away, would you lay down your fire as I raised mine? Would you not kill again?" Another line that comes to mind is Bruce Cockburn, "Got a kick at the darkness till it bleeds daylight." Think of those lines and your song. And you told us that song, that the poem is written by Linda? I've got to unmute you. Oops, I'm sorry. Unmute.
Right. No, those lyrics are written by me. The poem, all of the words were written at the Bates Dance Festival last August in Lewiston, Maine. But I borrowed the title from her. From her.
Beautiful.
Painting. Yeah. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. I look forward to listening to that a couple more times on YouTube and taking it in.
And the single is in the mastering stages now, so I want to get it out as soon as I can. Actually, working on a music video. Linda also is a calligrapher, and so she wrote out every letter of the alphabet by hand, which we've sent to a graphic designer in Ohio, who is going to take that and turn it into a vector file and turn that into a font so that the lyrics to the song can appear on screen in her handwriting, which is just magic to me.
All
I
right.
don't understand how this works, but for that.
All right. So, hello, folks. Usually this is where the facilitator introduces the speaker, but I guess we can dispense with that because I have the floor and I get to just beam about what I've been really interested in, which is this church and its history. And I want to start by showing you a couple of things. The first one is the bulletin of Community Church when Martin Luther King spoke here. It was April 20th, 1958. And there are several copies of this bulletin in different places, including in the official archive binder for 1958. Here's another one that is when 10 years later, when Dr. Harvey Cox Jr. spoke at Community Church. Noted Harvard theologian and author and professor, now retired, lives in Cambridge. We've been wanting to have him speak. He's getting on in his years, but it would be good if when the coast is clear, we can at least get him up on Zoom to say hello to him and remember him from back in those years. I bring these two to your attention for an interesting reason, which is that in the olden days, the hymns were, the lyrics of the hymns were on the back, and in both of these bulletins, they chose a hymn, but with different lyrics each time. They did this a lot, and in this case, it's the hymn is here. It's called America, but I would know it. We would know it as "My Country, 'Tis of Thee." And here is what it says. I'll sing you one verse from each one of these bulletins. My country is the world, my flags with stars impearled fill all the skies. All the round earth I claim, and all inspiring fame, my heart would prize. Mine are the lands and seas, all flowers, shrubs, and trees, all life's design. My heart within me thrills for all uplifted hills, and for all streams and rills, the world is mine. And then on the other one, in thy wide watered plains, thy mountains liberal veins and forests fair, large golden gifts are found, and in thy garden ground, earth's proudest fruits abound for all to share. In other words, you get the picture, taking a very nationalist theme and making it an internationalist theme. And they did the same thing with religion. You know, take the part of religion that's not about autocracy, and that's about the people and about wanting a better world, and focus on that. And that's community church. That's my introduction to a little film that I'm going to show you. This is something that I did in 3 takes. I wanted to get it shorter. I kept on, at the first time it took like 40 minutes, and I realized that was too long. And the second time 30, and now I think I have it down to about a little over 20 minutes. And it's basically, well, I'll just show it. First thing I have to do is share the screen. Next thing I have to do is click on what I want to show. And I'm sorry I haven't figured out how to fill the screen on my Mac Air, but here is what I wanted to share with you today. And then afterwards, we'll talk more. Good morning, folks. It's Dean Stevens. Community Church of Boston is where I'm located. I'm looking out the window. Of course, you notice the iconic Trinity Church right next to the John Hancock building, which is so tall I can't even reach the top of it through this window. But I'm on the 5th floor of the church's building on Boylston Street. To give you a sense of the bizarre ness of this pandemic moment, it's 9 a.m. In Copley Square in Boylston. There's almost no cars whatsoever. Just, that is my car, and it's the only one parked on this side. It's a pretty quiet scene. There are some homeless folks over there, just who looks like they've spent the whole night. Copley Square is a gathering place for a lot of folks who are in pretty tough circumstances, as well as the fancy real estate that you see all around. This is the 5th floor, where we have brought the archives of the church. They were for decades stored on the 4th floor, then they went down to the mezzanine, and they were stuffed in a broom closet. We managed to get an office space for them, about 80 square feet on the 4th floor, where they were for 4 years. And finally, when this floor was vacated and we were not able to rent it or use it because it has some important work that needs to be done, windows in pretty rough shape, a sprinkler system that will be installed soon. This was our moment to really lay the archives out and bring them into the light. This is our 100th anniversary, and these are sort of our keynote historical documents. This is binders, one for each year of Community Church's existence. Seasons, this church season started in the fall and went through the year into the summer, when we knocked off for the summer months. The earliest ones are right here. I'm going to see if I can start it again. 31 to 20, 28 to 31, and under that is another one that's 26 to 28. It goes on. They're in pretty rough shape, but it's all there. All of these books, binders, one for each year. Over here, this is just how I laid them out. They are in, let me turn this right. This is the 60s and the 70s, 80s, time of Bill Alberts. And then we come into more recent years in the 90s and the 2000s, we sort of lost our discipline of keeping the binders for a little while there, but here are the new ones that Crystal Rollins Jackson and I have been compiling, one for each year, for the past 4 years, and we have a fifth one that's this present year that we haven't completed yet. It has the graphics and the information and the bulletins. It also has the yearbook each year. I just really commend Crystal for her help with compiling and getting us back into the discipline of keeping a good record of what we've done. I want to take you from these binders to some other binders in here that are we call them our publicity binders. And I thank Ron Elbert for putting these in chronological order all the way up here. These are both clippings of ads that we put in the newspapers, as well as of previews of services that were going to be had and speakers that we're going to be hosting. And there were also articles about community church. I happened to open this one here, and here is the article about Lothrop in 1957 and his Activities Committee, where he testified. He gave a fiery speech, kind of a have you no shame speech, targeting about the fact that they had targeted a bunch of community church members and interrogated them. Among them, Abe Cohen, for example, who passed in the past few years. So we still remember that era in the memory of some of our members. Here's a lot of documents from Bill Albert's time here during the 80s. This is a whole lot of financial and fiscal documents. I want to just pick up one of them. This is from the year 2000. It looks like it's a big fat audit that we did. Fiscal documents and a lot of financial information in here. So I want to show you lots of these boxes are the correspondence of Donald Lothrop, who was our minister for 39 years, 1936 to 75 approximately. Lots of correspondence with all kinds of people. It's very well chronologized and alphabetized. Over here are minutes of the board. They're not in chronological order, and some of them are not in binders either, and it would be a great task and a great history lesson for us to go through all of these documents and put them in order and read them and find out about the different eras where and what kind of struggles we were going through and what kind of challenges we were facing. There's also minutes of a lot of other committees. We had a fellowship committee. We were very fond of throwing parties and hosting events and forums and talks, and still there as far as that. But there's minutes of the sewing circle. There's minutes of the fellowship committee, minutes of the literature committee. We had very extensive literature tables where we sold books, and we also sold publications. These are all publications from the community church over the years. So a lot of them were our newsletter. Each one had some kind of transcript of a previous speaker, or we had an annual fund drive that we would send out that was someone's address to community church. This was Robert Mirapol talking about Sacco and Vanzetti and the Rosenbergs and Mumia Abu Jamal, 1996. Lots of publications. It would be great to compile some of them into a book sometime. So I go on to a run through of some just miscellaneous documents that I've tried to put in some order. This one is called What is CCB? It's a lot of writings over the years from ministers, very eloquent writings about trying to define what the hell it is we are and how it is that we're different from other churches. Here is just a mention about our voluminous and enormous efforts in fund drives and canvassing members to raise funds to make the church be able to keep running. It was just an enormous effort that a lot of people worked on very hard. GBIO is Greater Boston Interfaith Organization. David Olson was the president of GBIO, and we were very active with them. Here's more documents about the Massachusetts House Un-American Activities Committee, and the address that Donald Lothrop gave to them was 1958 at the State House. It's really a marvelous piece of writing. Here's some things about the Rosenbergs. This is transcripts of the Supreme Court appeal of the Rosenberg case. Lothrop, our minister for 39 years, worked very hard to save their lives, put out a petition signed by many, many ministers to save their lives. This is called the Lrpc, Long Range Planning Committee, which was an enormous and thorough piece of work that a church committee did in 1987. They met for a year and they compiled a very well-written report to the church, and it was basically soul searching about the future of the church. It was part of that committee's work where they decided to not rent large halls anymore, and to make the second floor of this building an auditorium to have the meetings of the church. Over here, we have more of this kind of organizing effort. We have David Olson's correspondences and documents. We have documents about changes in the bylaws over the years. This is our sanctuary committee in the 80s where we harbored a certain Manuel. There's been a lot of interest in our documents around sanctuary. We were a pioneering church in providing sanctuary to politically persecuted individuals, like, for example, Manuel here lived for 2 years in the church's 3rd floor, I believe. And there he is wearing a mask the same way that we all are wearing masks during this pandemic. Here's documents around our prison membership program, which we still have. Here's the Gallery of Social Political Art, which was led by Yosh Sanborn Matsu, who painted those beautiful large paintings that are in our auditorium. Here's an experiment that we had for 1 year. It was called the Justice School. It was our effort to start a Sunday school for kids. We had about 7 or 8 kids who would come every Sunday with their families and learn our take on religious social education. Sacco Vanzetti documents, community voices and lyrics to songs. Willard Uphouse, director of the World Fellowship Center, extensive relationship with us. Here's documents on anniversary planning events, which we should be doing now, but we've been postponed by pandemic stuff. Here's W.B. Du Bois documents. And social action, that's a big pile of just different struggles we've been involved with over the years. Very interesting activism over the years. Here's a pile of photos. I've not even gotten a chance to look through these photos, but I noticed that on the very top is a photo of the handsome, debonair Donald Lothrop. And right next to it happens to be a photo of Lothrop maybe the last time he spoke at Community Church in the early 90s before he retired. And, he lived in Maine at that time. Here's a photo of some kind of meeting. Ladies very nicely dressed and in interesting hats. I wish I knew what the meeting was about. Let me take you over here. There's a little more, a lot more actually. It's endless. Here's some members of this church who have done incredible work to advance our work and our cause. And these are members who have donated documents. I want to mention especially John Mannheim, who presented maybe 5 or 6 years ago all the documents of his involvement with Community Church. He was our treasurer and our clerk for quite a few years and just did incredible extensive work. Cynthia Foster, when she passed, we got an enormous treasure trove of documents about her involvement with the church. David Lewitt, who published a newsletter about members of the church for several years in the early 90s. A certain Dean Stevens, who has brought a bunch of disarray of many documents in much less order than John Mannheim, and of course Ron Shapiro. Here are documents around the building, just different contracts that we've written, different work that we've done, a record of a lot of things that the church has gone through with this building. Here's a letter from Frank Bell, who owns several, maybe three different iterations of his restaurants on the first floor: Back Bay Bistro, White Star Tavern. Here's a guy named Tuttle, who was a contractor who we contracted to do facade work, who walked away with a bunch of money, and he ripped us off, and then he went to jail, and he paid in slow payments. I don't know if he completed his payments, but we moved back into the back room here. Here we have these archival boxes. Each box is 1 year of Donald Lothrop's booking correspondence. He was looking for speakers at Community Church, and he would go back and forth either with speakers bureaus or with the people themselves. I compiled a list that is inside this one in particular, 1953 to 54. Lothrop booking correspondence. He's corresponding with Thurgood Marshall, Ralph Bunch, Scott Nearing, Lewis Mumford, George Kennan, Richard Niebuhr, Robert Oppenheimer, Paul Tillich, Thornton Wilder, Bishop Bromley Oxnam of the Methodist Church, two rabbis, Brickner, and another one. It just gives you a sense of what is contained in here. Among these documents are correspondences with the likes of Martin Luther King Jr., Coretta Scott King. There's just a wealth of correspondence there. I just can't say enough about what this contains. We move over here to, this is some very delicate stuff. It's the very earliest things that we have. They're basically newspaper clippings from the teens and 20s. Around, especially interested in not so much the church because it wasn't founded yet, but interested in conscientious objectors from World War I, and also interested in labor organizing, the Lawrence labor strikes. And I remember seeing the article about the Ku Klux Klan in Lawrence and their strike breaking activities. So I want to just quickly show you what's in here. This has not been compiled or moved, but I want to especially commend Ed in Beer for his work on trying to put together a record of what we have in here. There are reel-to-reels up there. One of them I sent to have digitized and is available. It's W.E.B. Du Bois speaking at Community Church in 1959. That is available on our SoundCloud page. We also have lots and lots of cassettes. The cassettes were invented in the late 60s, early 70s, and we recorded a lot on cassettes. And there's also tons of VHS cassettes as well. I look at these two. I want to point out, especially right here, Jose Antonio Soler, who spoke here several times. He's a Puerto Rican independence activist from New Bedford. He passed recently. Jose Antonio Soler presente. I see also Matt Dumont, who spoke many times at Community Church. I see Loretta Williams. I see Jean Gallo. Hi, Jean. I hope you're watching this. Barney Frank is up there. Attorney Margaret Winter, Anna Morgan, Ruth Seidel, Joyce King, Bernie Metzger, Dirk Struick, Decima Williams. It's just so much here. I just can't say enough. I want to give you a little bit of Guna Oster. She was an artist who attended faithfully and drew pencil drawings of many of our speakers on her bulletin. This one is especially interesting because it's a certain Mildred Jefferson, MD. She was a clinical instructor in surgery at BU School of Medicine, a general surgeon on the staff of University Hospital, very noted pediatrician and surgeon. She spoke in 1973. Of course, that was the year of Roe v. Wade, and she was very against Roe v. Wade. We gave her a forum, and I just mentioned this as a way to say that Lothrop especially was interested over the years in hearing from people that we didn't necessarily agree with. I think of other members of this 1950s House Un-American Activities Committee that he invited to come and speak at the church and speak their mind. And they said, no, we can't do that. That would be a conflict of interest. Also, just different forums that we had over the years. I wanted to show you another drawing. I like this. This is Robert Drinan, Father Robert Drinan. This whole box is full of her programs. Lawrence Shubo. Here's Deborah Wood, mezzo soprano, with Robert Winfrey accompanist. I wish I would have been at that concert. Of course, Ruth Hamilton spoke. Dr. Mark Solomon, he spoke so many times at Community Church, and we still love hearing from Mark. I want to show you these. This is from our last tenant was here for 10 or 12 years, Boston Youth Organizing Project. They drew all these drawings on the walls. They had been gone for about 2 years. And here is something I just discovered and brought up here. It was a huge box of cassettes. I thought we were missing a big part of the cassette record. It's enormous, and I don't even know what's in there. I gotta get Ed Imbir in here to catalog and categorize all of these cassettes, put them in chronological order, figure out what we want to digitize and make available to the world of these cassettes, and of course, protect them at the same time. One last little item. Here is 2007, when we gave the Sacco Vanzetti Award to Mumia Abu Jamal. This is a DVD that also contains the recording that Mumia made for us, thanking us for our what we represented and for our award to him. And I would like to transcribe that tape and put it on a poster with a photo of Mumia to display in the auditorium sometime. That's it, folks. I just want to end by saying that I hope you get a sense of my enthusiasm about this church, its 100 years of history, and the just deep responsibility that we have in figuring out how to take care of and preserve and protect these archives that are here. This is us. This is our history. And it's a grand and noble thing. So I just want to thank you again and want to end with another incredible view of Copley Square on a gorgeous day with no cars. Why? Because it's pandemic time and the churches around here are not meeting. Down there is only one car on the entire block. You know how parking is a horrific thing here. That is my car down there. Thank you, folks. Okay. There we are. That is the video that I made this morning. And you can see, this could be all afternoon. Truly, I will show you that I'm surrounded by documents here, and each one tells a story that is precious. Start with this one. This is a speaker named Wendy Schall, who spent a bunch of time behind the enemy lines in El Salvador. And she was a photographer and a journalist, and she spoke. And the guest musician, get it up close, is Dean Stevens. I had even forgotten about that. I think that was the very first time I ever sang at community church. At that time, I was a paid choral singer at Old North Church, and would only come, I got a chance to come every once in a while. I had discovered the church and come to hear Noam Chomsky, Howard Zinn, Jonathan Kozol, and then this came up, and I called Bill Alberts and asked him if I could sing, and that was the first time. Here's another one. Donald Lothrop, The Duty of Dissent, spoken before the Community Church of Boston, February 12th, 1956. And it's just, here's the one I talked about in the video. It's the Lothrop's address to the General Court Legislative Committee on Rules, February 12th, 1958. Have you no shame? It has just, it's a beautiful quotes. I won't quote them. I'm not going to go too much longer because I want us to have a conversation. Here's a New York Times full-page ad signed by several people, including Donald Lothrop, an open letter to President John F. Kennedy against U.S. military intervention in South Vietnam, April 11th, 1962. And this is way ahead of the time that dissent to the Vietnam War had really turned into a thing. This was Donald Lothrop. Here's what I love. This is an article about the last time Lothrop preached as full minister at the church. It says, pastor steps down but not out. And it has an article about Lothrop stepping down to be emeritus minister, but it has this photograph from Conservatory Auditorium. It's, I don't know if you can see it, but all these ladies are dozing. I don't know if this was some sort of statement from the journalist or if it was just that they needed a photograph immediately, so just snap a photograph and get the hell out of there in time for a deadline, whatever. It was just like, here's something from Cynthia Foster, voluminous documents from Cynthia Foster, mostly handwritten, notes that she took on all the talks that she attended, mostly on on the back of junk mail envelopes. There's just boxes of these notes. This one is called "Shall We Change Our Name?" I guess there was some activism to change the name of the church. Some people think that it shouldn't be called the church because that has too much religious stigma, including certain people on this very Zoom call that have some very strong feelings about religion. Reverend Lothrop and Dirk Struick. This is an article in the Jewish Advocate. Dirk Struick, who was a mathematician at MIT and a committed Marxist. There was a journalist from the UK here last year who did a piece on Dirk Struick and on the 50s and the censoring and blacklisting. And Struick was one of the people he was studying, and he came and put out a very nice BBC piece on blacklisting and on Struick. Here's a bunch of stuff. These are just first one is an invitation to church members to together attend a concert in Jordan Hall. You would get free tickets, and the entire balcony of Jordan Hall was reserved for community church members. April 17th, I don't know what year, it doesn't say, but it's brought to us by the Fellowship of Community Church of Boston. And here's a whole bunch of demonstration that not only we were a church, but we were on an adult education center and very interested in all aspects of, let's start with religion. This one is religion and denominations. And it's a study, like say a 5 or 6 week series. And the first one, what does Judaism have to say about salvation and immortality? The next one, Roman Catholicism and the confessional, Christianity and the place of Jesus, Unitarianism and the role of reason, Quakers and the inner light, Islamic conception of God. Tons of these during the 50s and 60s, adult education, very interested in the voice of the church on religion and life, 1968, very interested in psychology, therapy. Let me find some psychological problems and personal development, 1964, anxiety, freedom and personal identity, isolation and alienation, pressures of masculinity, femininity, and deviation, emotional maturity, personal security and well-being. It's pretty phenomenal that Lothrop did all of this and put on this incredible series, many series of these talks. He also had an every Wednesday night series that was he would make. They tell me, maybe Dick Kashishin could tell us more. He would make meatloaf on a Wednesday night, and you could come down and hear a speaker and have a conversation. So it's endless, and every one of these documents just tells something. There's a lot of in memoriam, and this is Leonel. I never met him, but Leonel was David Olson's partner. And he passed in 1996, HIV. It was right before David got very involved with us. At that time, he lived here and he was the custodian. Then he became the secretary and office manager. Then he became the minister. But this was his partner. There's one in English and one in Spanish for Leonel, whose name was Dionisio Santos Beltran. It goes on, but I will stop and we will have conversation. But first, we will hear one last song from Mr. Rob FLAX. It's great to have you with us, Rob. And when the coast is clear, be sure to look up Rob's music on CDs. And when the coast is not clear, you can find him on YouTube and other platforms of all kinds.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. It's thank you, Dean. I think I'm going to do a little medley to round us out here. I turned my screen off during the video presentation so I could stealthily prepare a little drone. So I've looped a drone, which I will now fade in. And I'm going to play over it a fiddle tune and then a Stephen Foster song. And if you know the words and you're muted, feel free to sing along. But I'll start with Over the Waterfall. Pleasures and countless many tears while we all there's a song that will linger for our ears. Oh, hard times come again. 'Tis the song, sigh of the weary. Hard times, hard times, many days you have lingered around my gate. Oh, hard we seek mirth and beauty and music bright and gay. There are frail forms fainting at the though their voices are silent, their pleading looks will say, oh, hard times come again. 'Tis the song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again. Many days you have lingered around my cabin. Oh, hard times come again. Oh, hard times come again. Dean, you yourself are muted.
Thank you, Rob FLAX. Always great to hear you. What a great voice. What a great spirit. And thanks to everybody. I want to just open the conversation by thanking some people who have helped with the archives, who have both given strong advice. Dave Nathan, who's an occasional attendee at Community Church, and his wife Diane Simpson. Dave is the retired archivist for the city of Boston, and they came and gave us a pretty sizable report on what he saw and ideas and suggestions as to what to do moving forward. Also, Ed Imbir, who has helped a lot cataloging both the publications and the audio and video. There's more work for you, Ed, as well. And Ron Albert and Ellen Mass and Max Lockwood has also helped out. And of course, Thurman has been a great help. He helped us move the boxes, and Luis Guzman and Thurman Judge both helped in moving the boxes and helping getting them out so we could look at them, study them, figure out exactly what needs done with them to preserve them and to make them as available as we can, to digitize them, all these things. So if there are any questions, they could be on the chat, as well as just you can raise your hand and maybe Charlie will recognize you and unmute you.
Dean, I don't know if she wants to do it, but Mary Lynn emailed me a question, and I'll try to unmute her and see if she wants to ask it directly.
Okay.
Hello, are you there, Mary Lynn? You might be catching her off guard.
Okay.
Anyway,
let me try to, Mary Lynn, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Mary Lynn, Charlie says that you emailed in a question, but we wanted to see if you wanted to ask it live on the phone. Whoops. There we
Can you
go.
hear me?
Now we can hear you, Mary Lynn.
I didn't really have a question. This was way earlier, and I just put it in an email to you and Charlie when you were talking about Jason. So I guess part of the history of I'm overwhelmed with what you just presented, and I'm going to send that to a few of our mutual friends to make sure they watch it. It was wonderful. Just an incredible, enormous task to put that all together. And thank you, all of you who are working on it. I was just mentioned in a YouTube chat thing to Dean and to Charlie that it's my understanding that Jason had started Black and Pink while he was in prison, and he continues to head like a national, international organization while he's in Chicago. And Michael Cox, who has spoken at Community Church, is a close friend of Jason's, and I think he's head of Black and Pink in Boston. Oh, and the other little comment I had sent in, this is way earlier, was it's not just deaf people. Quakers wave their hands instead of applauding and meeting for worship. And so my only other comment was to just thank Dean and Charlie and all attendees for being there. An 82-year-old woman sheltering in place and not seeing any familiar faces all week long. I very, very much appreciate your being there. So thank you.
Well, Mary Lynn, I say thank you right back to you, and for all of your activist work online and the things that you send to a chat room that's called CCB All Committees. That Mary Lynn is the main mover and shaker there and sends a lot of different really wonderful resource material and activist announcements. So thanks, Mary Lynn. And the more suggestions, the better. Keep them coming for speakers and for activist actions. Did I see Ken's hand up?
I have two questions, each a little bit different. First, Dean, you have such enthusiasm, and I wonder if you would be willing to speak to where your enthusiasm for the church comes from, because it's so apparent and you do so much. The second question is, why is this called a church? So that goes back, obviously, decades, and I'm wondering why this was organized as a church. I'm sure that that was sort of a vehicle of the times, but if you would be willing to answer both those questions.
Thanks, Ken. Great to see your face. And I've got to say that the enthusiasm came first from before I had even seen that mess of archives. Just what the church was, and what it spoke to me was about the part of religion that's about community, that's about bringing people together and working towards a common purpose, which is a better and more just world. And that really spoke to me. I first got involved here when David Olson was here, and I was hired to just do a musical thing for a couple of months, to be a musician in residence and lead the choir, just a few singers. And I stayed for a couple of months, and 25 years later, still around, and just more and more active and involved. And seeing those archives really brings forward another, really part of me, which is very spiritual, but rejects some of the hierarchical part of religion, and the awful things that religion has done to people and communities over centuries and millennia, and wanting to find that part of church that was really important in my childhood, which was about community, about getting kids together and having fun and doing stuff and going on outings and finding common purpose and building a building together, and that kind of thing that it really spoke to me. And to me, unlike a lot of people on the left, the word church didn't have a bad stigma. And then learning about the church, especially in the African American world, and what an important part of their survival and the advancement of their soul, and the advancement of their struggle in the civil rights era is something that's just so deeply inspiring that you can't completely discount the word church. Cynthia Foster in that one piece, and I'd be glad to share it with you, talks about sort of that now, why should we not change our name? Well, it's about a sort of a capitalist notion, which is brand name trademark, and you've had it for 100 years, and it's kind of maybe served you well. Why stop now? And then there's other people who say maybe the reason we don't have too many young people here is because young people aren't interested in church, and they're looking elsewhere for community, for spiritual sustenance. So that's a little bit of answer to your question, Ken, which is not enough answer. It's a long conundrum that maybe we should change our name to Society of Retired radical old farts.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting anything about a name change. I'm just wondering, when the church was founded, why did they choose church as a vehicle? Was it in an effort, some people had been in other churches, but they wanted something more liberal and more social activist? And I know a lot of the people were from the old left. So.
Well, I know that the two founders were Universalist ministers, and were both rejecting the church's role in World War I, applauding militarism and applauding patriotic nationalism. And they were, one of them, Clarence Skinner, was a deeply pacifist, and they wanted to, it was part of a movement. I haven't found the other churches founded, but it's the community church movement. And it started in New York with John Haynes Holmes, and then it found a very, very strong counterpart here in Boston. And the first meeting, January 11th, 1920, there were either 200 or 400, there's two different accounts, attending in a place called Steinert Hall, and it soon grew to be enormous. It only took about 10 years before it really took off, and it really struck a chord of some kind, because a lot of people were coming. I've heard theorized that a couple things that people liked. One was people who were what was called mixed marriages, being mixed race or mixed religion. You know, in that day, a Catholic married to a Jew was this horrible, stigmatic, terrible thing on both sides, on families. And Lothrop, for example, married just tons of people in that category, including our own Tilly Teixeira, who will tell you that that's why she was drawn with her husband Ed Teixeira, who was Cape Verdean. She's Jewish, to come to Donald Lothrop to marry them. So that's a little bit. And you look at the programs from the early years, and it's a very religious thing. It's a bulletin that has hymns, that has organ music, that has it has the sort of order of service that looks very much like a conventional church, but it's in a huge auditorium, you know, so you have a whole staff of ushers, you know, you have 20 ushers going around taking the collection. So it's a little bit different, and it's big, that it's so big. Some people call it a leftist megachurch from the early on days. So that's a little bit about the kind of church origins of it. I will mention one other thing, Ken, which is that, and I'd like to show everybody a document that is our founding document. We weren't founded as a church, which is called a 501c3. We were founded as in the laws of Massachusetts as what's called a Chapter 180 organization, which is a much bigger category of organization. That includes a lot of other kinds of sort of social benefit nonprofit organizations. What I want to show you is this document, which is the founding document of the community church. The first time we are officially recognized by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts as a Chapter 180 organization. And this is, I think it's the first time it's come to light. I would like to frame it and put it up on a wall somewhere, because it's a very clean, fresh document. It looks like it's been sitting in a folder since 1923 when it was issued. We applied for it in 1922, and I have copies that are on record with the Secretary of State of the first the first application, and it has the founders of the church, which include, of course, Clarence Skinner and John Haynes Holmes. It also includes a wonderful woman who is part of our history. Her name was Gertrude Winslow, Mrs. Gertrude Winslow, who was very active also in the early defense of Sacco and Vanzetti. She made friends with Vanzetti and visited him many times. And his Mrs. Winslow's granddaughter was with us just a few weeks ago, and gave a presentation and read some of the letters between Mrs. Winslow and Nicola, I mean Vanzetti. So there's a little bit more on the founding of the church, and it's a very interesting. Different church from any other one there is, if you ask me. Rob FLAX, I will unmute Rob FLAX, yes? Wait. Whoops.
I'm
There you go, Rob.
Unmuted, all right, very good. I for one would very much be interested in joining the Society of Retired Old Farts. I think that would be great. So,
but you're not an old fart.
I'm working on it. I'm growing as fast as I can.
We can remove the age restriction from our membership requirement.
Society of Farts. Maybe. Anyway, thank you for that, Dean. I just wanted to say thank you, everyone, for listening. And I just dropped a thing in the chat in case people want to get updates on when the new song that I performed today is going to be released to the world. If you shoot me your email, I'll send you updates about it. Or there's a link to just go check it out yourself. So I wanted to give that and let people know if you're curious to listen again, that's how to find me the best way. So
thank you, Rob.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Is wonderful. It's such a historic church, and it's absolutely wonderful every time to be here. I'm not a particularly religious person myself. My father is of Jewish descent. My mother is of Christian origins, and neither of them are particularly religious. So it's an unusual thing to find me in anything remotely called a church on a Sunday morning, but I feel very passionately that CCB is a special place. And so I always feel welcome here, and thank you for having me. Yeah, it's really wonderful to be here.
All right, Rob.
Dean, you might want to take this opportunity to pass the hat.
Yes, that's right. We forgot to mention, where's the basket? We have a basket. Here's the basket. We can't send this basket to you via 3D printer and have you put in any bills, or we don't have the 3D printer that will accept your legal tender. But we do have a website that Charlie will put in the chat section, where you can donate to Community Church both on PayPal and on credit card. We will tell you also that we are in a serious crunch moment right now because of the restaurant being closed and the serious curtailment of that revenue stream which we rely on. This too shall pass, but in this very moment, it's very difficult. Our budget plans have been thrown out the window. So if you could be generous with us, we would certainly appreciate it. I also want to give enormous shout out to about 23 people who have sent in checks with that mail appeal that we sent out with our newsletter. It adds up. There's 8 envelopes that haven't been opened in there, but it already adds up to about $3,500. So you are some very generous folks, and we thank you for your generous contributions to Community Church. Anybody else who would like to chime in? I see Faye and I see Kevin. Let's start with Faye. We have you unmuted. Faye, go ahead.
Hey, I just wanted to know, because I know that you had asked a long time ago about looking for help with the archives. And I'm just wondering what do you have a plan for what you're going to do with it? Because I think it's an amazing history. I remember coming to the community church when I was young, and you were downstairs on the first floor, and it was standing room only. And to hear about, you know, the community church being at Symphony Hall. I mean, I think people should know that history, and you know, maybe you could have committees out of all those different things that you have done in the past, you know, to bring them up to the present, because you've been working, because the church has been working on all of these issues for 100 years. It's amazing. So I'm just wondering what you've already come up with, because, you know, I remember when I think you asked for help with the archives, was it a couple of years ago? And people have been, you know, so that's my question.
Thanks, Faye. It's good to see you. And I want to say that these archives have taken a back burner and a second fiddle to the fires and the floods and the crises and the schisms that we've been through many a time in my 20 years of being very active here, 23 to be exact. Such a backseat that they spent decades in boxes in a broom closet, and nobody even touched them. I'm very proud that I was able to convince the board to unrent a room that's 80 square feet, pretty small room, and we took them from the broom closet, Rodney and I, and made shelves and laid them out and put them in chronological order and just started looking at them. But eventually that room got so full, there were archives all over the building that you could almost not move in there, and it became difficult. Now that we have a vacant 5th floor, until we're able to do some repairs on the windows and the fire and the sprinkler system, this was the moment to take everything out, lay it out, and get an assessment of what's there. It's our 100th anniversary, and really to truly get professional advice from archivists, skilled people like Ed Imbeer, like Dave Nathan, as to exactly how to treat these documents, and maybe they need to be somewhere else that has more resources than we do to really preserve them well. There's a selfish part of me that says, no, don't let them out of this building. But maybe that's truly the real place they need to go if they're going to really be preserved and made available to scholars, researchers, to the public. I would think that if the seminaries around here, schools of theology, knew that there would be students who wanted to do a doctoral dissertation about this record of archives, all these things, we will have, you know, when we started our 100th anniversary deliberations and plans, one of the plans, and some people from this are on this call, was to form an archive committee and get people together, including the expert people, and start talking about exactly the destination of these documents. These documents are not mine; they belong to us, and we need to, as a group, as a committee, make decisions, wise decisions as to the care and feeding of these archives. So thanks, Faye, for that. And I'd love to hear maybe even on video your complete story of all of your memories of community church in those early years. Can we do that sometime?
Yeah, I don't have a lot. I would come occasionally, but I came when I was young. And there were an awful lot of people that were there with me. So, and I think we are seeing now an upsurge again. You know, we have upsurges of, you know, people rising up, and we're certainly seeing one now. And I think if the church can figure out how to be part of, you know, I mean, you've been doing that all along. It's nothing new, but you know, figure out how to be part of that more. I don't think we are. I think we're part of something much bigger, and you know that already. We all know that. So I take heart. That's all. Yeah.
Thanks, Faye.
Yeah.
That's great. A couple of things from the chat room. There's an announcement about a Boston event at 3 p.m. I don't know if it's a physical march or a Facebook Live march, but it's called Clergy United for Prayer, Protest, and Justice Prayer March. It's a Facebook event. You can see it in the chat room. Barry Warner sent it to us. Another one is from Ronaldo, suggesting that we need acid-free boxes. I think that our archive specialists will make those suggestions, and there have been ideas about getting grants to do the proper restoration. You saw that a lot of those binders are in pretty rough shape. If we could get those documents in new clean binders without damaging any of the contents, that would be very good. Sometimes whoever, if you were going to move it to they call it a repository, there are several possible wonderful repositories. One is Northeastern, which houses the documents of a lot of progressive, liberal politicians and organizations. Theodore Offensive, our tenant here, has their archives housed at Northeastern. Another one is Harvard Divinity School, that has the Unitarian Universalist connection and has endless resources to do amazing stuff around scanning and digitizing documents, and having lots of research assistants and interns help with that kind of thing. There's a lot there, and it's opening up just hopefully this exposition is the beginning of an enormous conversation that we have about our archives and what to do with them, because as far as I'm concerned, there's just a treasure of wealth there, stuff that I haven't found, just snippets of history of Boston and the world, and how we fit into that history, and how radical movement should respond, and all those things. Is there
Kevin
any...
looks like he has a question.
Kevin,
I'm muted.
Hi, Kevin.
I'm muted now.
Oh, you've okay. Yeah. The question is as well, it has to do with Dirk Stroik. I got to meet Dirk Stroik in the late 90s with I'm friends with Kevin Joyce, and he knew Dirk Stroik. So the thing about it is that I found when Dirk died in October of 2000, I went to the memorial service for him, and then it was at that point that I found that his background in Holland was amazing. I mean, there had been a meeting in World War I when he was still in Holland before he went to MIT. We're right in the middle of World War I. This is around 1916. They called a meeting at his town of Utrecht, and the meeting came, and all these people didn't come except for this one man, and he came from Switzerland. And then he's the only one who was at the meeting. he went across all these, how do I describe it, the battle lines from Switzerland all the way to Holland. And he was amazed. Dirk said he was amazed to meet this man. And then he found out he was from Russia. And then he finds out that I asked him who he was. He says, my name is Vladimir Ulyanov. And then he finds out later that his name was Lenin. And then he says, this is at the memorial service. There are these professors who had been told by Dirk that this is the man who was going to lead the Russian Revolution. And it was a kind of an amazing story. And I was there with my friend Kevin, and we said, is this possible that he did? Yeah. And then there all these other professors are all saying it was true that this happened in 1916. So I just wanted to know if anyone in the community church had been informed of that, had been told of that when Dirk was the president of the community church I forget when he was president, but has any of this information been communicated? So Dean,
Kevin, thanks. I never knew that Dirk was president of community church.
Yeah, he had been. I believe he had been at one point. I don't know when that was. But.
As soon as we can compile and chronologize the minutes of the board meetings, maybe we'll be able to find that out. What I can tell you about Dirk Struick is that John Mannheim told me a story about his last address at community church, where he talked about the importance in his life of the 3 M's. And the 3 M's were mathematics, marriage, and Marxism.
That's right. Yeah, I remember that.
You remember that?
I remember I wasn't there when he was with the community church. I just know about that being told, I think, when John mentioned that. Yeah.
There are also in these archives, records of when he spoke.
Yes.
We have pretty much a complete record of the church's speakers from 1921 all the way till now.
Right.
We're missing 2 or 3 years. But
yes.
I mentioned this journalist from Britain, Ahsan Massoud, who's
yes.
a British Arab guy who was at MIT. It's a journalism school at MIT,
right.
And he wanted to look at every reference we had of Dirk Struick, especially because of his being blacklisted during the 50s, and
yes,
especially because we gave him a forum despite the blacklisting. You find.
Right.
Tons of academics in that same category. You get these speakers' names and you look them up, you Google them, and it's very common to find this professor was blacklisted and was fired from Williams College or from this place or that place because of his radical leanings.
That's right. What I heard that he had wanted to overthrow the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which is totally unheard of. It was absurd, and he was found innocent by the Court of Massachusetts. He was found innocent. Yeah.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Yep. Right.
Is there anyone else? Anyone who has just stories about early community church? I don't know if Dick Kashishin is still on the call.
It's Dorothy there.
Dorothy.
I just unmuted her. I think she has to unmute herself if she wants to speak.
Dorothy,
Hi.
are you there?
I am. Hi.
Okay.
I don't know what period of time I didn't catch when you spoke about the community churches having a children's program, but I know that there was one that my daughter was part of and Judith Woodruff's daughter was, and Femkus, whose last name I'm not good at,
Rosenbaum.
her children, and it was originally at it started at the auditorium, the big auditorium.
Morse.
Was that the period that you have the information on?
The one I talked about in the film, which incidentally, I'll tell you, I didn't mean it to be jerky stills like that. I meant it that's just how it came out for some reason or other. But the one I'm talking about was in after that, in 2006, Jason Lydon was instrumental in.
I remember now.
As well as Betsy Rueda Guin, whose daughter was to be one of the participants in that justice school. We hired somebody who developed a curriculum and then did a year of running this justice school. And then unfortunately she quit very suddenly, and we weren't able to continue it after that.
Well, there was a prior school.
Oh yes, I absolutely remember it. Morse Auditorium. There was a school, and they were.
And there was somebody paid. There was a paid person. I think her name was Diane. She had a curriculum. I have some of that still, and my daughter benefited. I think that it continued a bit when there was a move, because I think it was right before the move. So I hope that you will run into some way to document that there was that time as well. That's what I wanted to speak up about.
Absolutely, Dorothy, and the Lrmans kids were involved, and Max Lockwood himself was involved in that early kids program. I remember in the 80s when I went to community church, they would bring all the kids up, and Bill Alberts would read a story.
Well, that happened at the auditorium. There was a time when Rosa Parks spoke, and the children went across the stage and shook her hand, and then they went downstairs to the space for program.
Judy has a question.
Hi. I was going to say that I was involved in the church since '77, and Ann Walsh, by the way, was also head of the children, and which took place. Let's see, my son was born in '73, so he was about, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 when we were over here at our present location. And Ann Walsh, and they were using the Unitarian children's curriculum with a little bit of more politics thrown in. And it was pretty well attended. And it was a good memory for our children. I was going to say that. And that was when Alberts was the minister. So I just wanted to contribute that. I wondered if there could be some kind of, well, I guess we need to figure out immediately some kind of grant or some kind of collection to really preserve the archives in more waterproof ways. Being up on the 5th floor, if there was a leak from the roof, that's very dangerous. So, and they're all paper. It seems to me that there needs to be something done fairly soon.
Luckily, on that part of the roof, we have a very recent roof.
Oh, good.
It used to be leaky, but it no longer is, because we spent $60,000 on a roof in about 2010, which is a pretty young roof compared to the other one. But you have a very, very good point. That fire or flood, either one can really destroy valuable archives, and it's a reason to find out a good destination for these documents, or else protect them well in acid-free, light sensitive, and metal cabinets and whatnot, if they're going to stay with us, or maybe they need to move somewhere else. That's above my pay grade.
I wanted to answer you. I think that if we're having a grant, there's nothing wrong in making duplicate copies or combining them in some kind of way so that whoever gets the originals, maybe a library or a university that can preserve them well, that we also have a copy here and we put it in a way that it can be a reading room where people can take an archive out, take a look at it, have headphones where people can listen to past ones with chairs, tables, etc., that are set up as a room for that purpose. And I think that could be very interesting.
Sounds like you're dreaming up a purpose for the 5th floor of our building.
Well, it could be one of the things. I mean, there could be other things there, but that certainly could be a good part of it. And I
Can you imagine up there a really comfortable, beautiful library of the left where we have all kinds of books. Our library down here on this auditorium floor that's features a lot of the books written by speakers at Community Church and other radical topics, and it could have also some of the journals that many of us subscribe to and collect and never read because there's too many journals. The media feed is just too much of a torrent for us to digest. But if they were in a common place like that, Friends Meeting House in Cambridge is a good template for us if we were to do that. They have a very carefully collected, cataloged, cared for library. So just some thoughts that I had about that.
Yeah, I wanted to mention one more thing. We have a lot of wonderful folk singers and choruses who we also, if we had the money, could have somebody collect, and they could be put into a file so people could come here and hear all these folk songs. And we often had, the words of the songs so that they could be accumulated. I think it could be a very wonderful listening room. It could be a place that people would really, really appreciate. There would be a lot of other folk singers who would come to look at materials. I think we've had some incredible people here. So I think that certainly could be done and would be part of a grant that could be written. And maybe we need to get a grant committee of people from the church, but also maybe we could attract people from people who are studying library science in the city.
Yeah, that's another really strong possible repository is Simmons College. It has a College of Library Science and Archiving, and we have 3 different very wonderful retired professors from Simmons. In fact, 4 who are on our stable of people that we call on. One is Mark Solomon, Reggie Jackson, David Goulet, and Elaine Hagopian, all retired Simmons folks, and there's quite a library there. This is an anniversary pamphlet that we put out routinely. This one is from 1966. It has a list of speakers at Community Church, and among the categories are statesmen and political leaders, Ralph Bunch, Edward Brooke, Ambassador Isabel de Palencia, clergymen, theologians, and philosophers, Krishnamurti, Corliss Lamont, one of the founders of ACLU, Will Durant. The list is endless. Dr. Paul Tillich, Harvey Cox, AJ Musty, China and Asia specialists, Edgar Snow, Anna Louise Strong, labor leaders, educators and college presidents, editors, commentators, and journalists, I.F. Stone, Dorothy Thompson, political leaders, economists, sociologists, historians, lawyers, jurists, of course, Thurgood Marshall, and many Boston area other judges. On the back is scientists and belles lettres, James Weldon Johnston, Langston Hughes, Kirtley Mather, the geologist from Harvard, Truman Nelson, Harlow Shapley, Otis Skinner. That's Cornelia Otis Skinner, who was a very famous Shakespearean actress. She was Clarence Skinner's sister, if I'm not mistaken. It's phenomenal.
Dean,
And we could go on forever. It's 1:06 p.m., but let's take some more questions. I'm here.
just Charlie, I know Faye has got something, but I just wanted to say something shortly. I don't know if people are familiar with StoryCorps. It's a sort of a systematic way of doing an interview with somebody, especially somebody who's getting older and making a permanent record of it. I realize you could almost do the same thing over Zoom, where you wouldn't have to, you could be done safely in the present thing, like a one-on-one thing with Zoom and recording, and especially emphasizing the history of the community church. I think that's something we should look into. And I'll stop there. Faye, did you still want to say something?
Just briefly, there used to be a group called Radical Librarians, and I'm sure they would love to be part of, looking at all this stuff, and they would know what to do with it. They would know, because that's what they do. So I'm willing to look up and send you the link if, I'm hoping that they still exist. But they were this was maybe, I'm trying to think how many years ago, but they were young people, trying to electronically, be available for to do fact checking and stuff like that. And so I'm hoping that they're still around, and they would be a great resource. That's all I have.
Okay. Thanks, Faye. Jose Aleman asked us, is there a registry of all the paid leaders who led CCB? How many of them are still around? In what ways are they connected to CCB? Thanks, Jose. I could count them on my fingers. The one that goes back the furthest is named Phil Zwirling, and I believe he's still around. He's probably in his late 80s, but he's a professor somewhere. I've seen some postings from him recently. I haven't tried to reach him. There's Bill Alberts. There's Tim Anderson, who was just with us for just a couple of years. And of course, David Olson, who's a very vibrant minister in Baltimore, and Jason Lydon. Those are the ones that come to mind. Also still with us is Linda Jenkins is around. I believe still in Boston. And so there's a few. Your other question, Jose, is how far back in time does the current book of CCB members go? I think it goes back to the 70s. We have a bound book. I can go get it if you want. No, I'll show it just as an invitation of anybody who wants to sign that book and join this happy campers crowd of community church members. I think it goes to the 70s, if I'm not mistaken, but there's other books that go back further than that. Okay. Any other hands up? And
so is it time to unmute everybody so we can have a last chat? And
sure, everybody is unmuted.
Yeah.
It's Alan. I had a question, but I don't know if you saw it.
Alan, I'm sorry. Alan had a question. Can we mute everybody? And Alan, I did see your text.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I didn't get to you.
just
Hi, can you hear me okay?
yes, we can.
good. Yeah, just a quick comment. First of all, Dean, I want to thank you so much for a wonderful presentation and also for your just enormous service to the church itself all the time. It needs to be said. It's just wonderful. Thank you. I wanted to clarify something that was mentioned before, and if it was a different topic other than the church itself, I would just let it go. But it would be, you had mentioned that, like our tax status or our incorporation status, Chapter 180. Chapter 180 is a Mass General Law chapter that governs the chartering of all corporations, not just nonprofits. It's all corporations, and we are a corporation, and we are incorporated as a house of worship, and so that has its own set of requirements. But all corporations need bylaws approved by the state or on file with the state, basically. 501c3 that you also mentioned is a federal tax designation. It's quite different. I won't get into all that, but it's not. The state and the federal government, of course, interact with one another. But anyway, so the other question, or another person had raised the issue of why are we a church, and why do we call ourselves a church and not something else? In our bylaws, in our mission statement, we declare that we are an organization that is dedicated or created for the practice of universal religion. And that it goes on to say that the universal religion is, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but that it's linked to values, real values. And, it doesn't say that we exist to promote social justice, for example. It doesn't say that specifically. It does say that we are there to promote certain values through religion. And so I just add my own 2 cents into that, and that is that our bylaws give, well, first of all, we're in the United States, we have freedom of religion. And so we are declaring that this is our method of practicing spiritual values, and we have the right to do that. And further, our bylaws, they don't say it specifically, but they give the individual complete freedom to come to our institution, our church, our organization, and practice these spiritual values as we choose. And that includes not even calling it religion if we don't want to. So it gives us enormous freedom, and it's just a gem that's so worth protecting. And I just want to say thank you again, Dean.
I went away. I'm back here. I just wanted to go and show off this membership book that has hundreds and hundreds of names in it. And it's our membership book. Let's see, this one, Jose, goes back to, let's see, what's the earliest dates in here? 1960, 1967, 64 and 65. And the most recent ones are right now, 2020. The most recent member is right on the call. His name is Ed Imbeer, and Ed has been very interested and active in helping out with the archives. Thank you, Ed. And finally, unless there's anybody else, where it's 1:14, I'd like to just read what Alan talked about here. This is the founding document. It's from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Secretary of the Commonwealth, and it says, be it known that whereas, and it has 7 names of the founders, Clarence Skinner, George McElwain, William Hesseltine, Gertrude Winslow, Irene Henderson, James Faulkner, and Laura Kendrick, have associated themselves with the intention of forming a corporation under the name of the Community Church of Boston for the purpose of the following. The Community Church shall be a free fellowship of men and women dedicated to the fulfillment of social idealism through common service for the common good. It seeks to cultivate the open mind, the aspiring spirit, the passion for justice, and the application of the cooperative principle to all forms of social and economic life, and have complied with the provisions of the statutes of this Commonwealth in such case, made and provided as appears for the certificate of the proper officers of said corporation duly approved, on and on. So there is the intent, the original intent and purpose of the Community Church of Boston to be formed. And here we are 100 years later. Stay tuned for celebrations. Tonight would have been the concert with Luis Mejia Godoy. It would have happened at First Church on Marlborough Street. We had rented a bigger auditorium to have a concert with Luis. He is a noted Nicaraguan songwriter. He was the soundtrack of the Sandinista Revolution, along with his brother Carlos Mejia Godoy. And unfortunately, the pandemic stepped in and we had to postpone, not cancel, Luis Enrique Mejia's concert, as well as several other concerts. Let's all stay tuned and continue to be vigilant and to help keep this flame alive and keep this thing called Community Church of Boston going on into our next century. I will finally announce that our last presentation for this season, although we're talking about maybe doing some summertime Sunday events, and I really hope that happens. But our last presentation next Sunday is a very, very special one. It is Eliza Gilkison. She is the soundtrack to my car. She's written many amazing songs of social justice and of all kinds of other things. She's a very gifted and brilliant songwriter from Austin, Texas. We were going to have her live as well, but the pandemic stepped in. But we do have her on Zoom, and we really look forward to having her next Sunday, Eliza Gilkison. Thank you all. And unless there's any other order of business or celebration or announcement or joke telling or complaining, we shall call amazing songs in club.
Oh, the meeting.
All kinds of other things. She's very gifted and brilliant. Live as well, but the pandemic stepped in. So we do have her on YouTube. That's me. It's my echo on YouTube. Take care, folks. Have a great week. And we hope to see you next Sunday, if not sooner, okay? If there's any other order of business, I will declare the meeting adjourned. Charlie, are we all set to be adjourned?
Yes.
Okay. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.